Hello my gorgeous ones, welcome to Alicia Budget Beauty. My name is Alicia. Here on my channel, I love affordable fashion and beauty. I do hauls, tutorials, reviews, all sorts of fun stuff. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe, be a friend. And today I'm really excited because everyone and their beauty lovins, dogs, mothers, sisters, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, pig, is in love with the Natasha Denona Yucca Palette. I have seen it all over my social media. I finally broke down and I did order it myself. And I don't have it yet, but I had an idea to do this video before I broke down and ordered it. And I thought I'm still gonna do this video without seeing the palette because I know there are a few out there who are not going to buy it, who may feel some FOMO. And there's a lot of palettes that I already own that are similar. None of these are dupes by any stretch, but they have a lot of similar tones, similar feels, similar looks that you can get, including the look I have today. And so I wanted to still do this video before I got the palette, just so I can show you guys that within my own collection, I probably would have been just fine, but I'm a weak individual and I did order it. But if you haven't, maybe you have some of these in your collection and you just hadn't thought, oh, that they are similar yet, or maybe you even want to pick up some of these because all of these are cheaper than that palette. So if you want to see some of my Natasha Denona Yucca alternative palettes, keep on watching. All right, first up on my eyes today is a palette that I know a lot of people own, and that is the BH Cosmetics Avocado Toast palette. So when we look at this, I'm gonna also just try to always have the picture of the Yucca palette over here so that you can see the comparison. Now, these are not, again, dupes, but you have a lot of green tones in here, obviously. And then you even have some of the warmer that aren't that bright orange or that, you know, kind of like a rustic-y orange necessarily. But I think if you combine these two here and blend it out, it could brighten this to make it a little bit more of a vibrant orange. I do have on today, let's see, I did Superfood right here in the crease. Above that, I went in with Paprika. In the more inner portion, I did Over Easy. And then lower lash line is Pit, which is like a deep brown. Then I also darkened up, let's see, with, was it Holy Moly? Or let's see, what did I use here? I know that I used Haas for the shimmer, and then more of the inner corner, I went in with Avocado Toast, and then a little bit of the lemon pepper to brighten that up. So again, it is not a dupe, but I even looked on the Natasha Denona site and looked at some of the looks that, like when you swipe, and it was similar, I mean, not exactly, but it was similar to this, where they did that like brighter upper portion that they used the orange for, and then the green and brown. And so I think you would never know. I think you could pass off and say it was from that palette and maybe someone would believe you. So that's the first palette that I recommend as an alternative. All right, next we have the Ace Beauté Vintage Dawn palette. Now, obviously, this is a lot different with this blue here, but say you took this out. And that's what a lot of it is I think some people, they just look at a palette as a whole and they're like, it's not the same, or if it doesn't look just like it, I can't get the same look. But you have to sometimes just pretend certain shades aren't there, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I can see that, because you do have the oranges in here, you have the greens, the golds, and the brown. And so I do think that you could get a similar look. This is a little bit, you know, more like harvesty looking, but I think it is still an alternative. All right, this one is the She Glam Pitch Pretty palette. So this is definitely brighter. I would say this would pair really beautifully with the Yucca palette because it does bring in some of these like brighter tones here and like with the red. So But eliminate those and you start to see the greens, that orange, that brown. Again, this is actually, it looks like it's gonna be a bit brighter than the one that's in the Yucca palette. Again, I don't have it in my possession yet, but I don't think it's quite this bright. And this is probably slightly more, yeah, like sheer. There it is. Than it would be from the Natasha Denona. But I do think that you could bring it in to that palette and pop it in the corner. It'd look pretty. I really love this shade here. These two really look like they could belong in that palette. So just in case you have this one, I'm not sure if that one's still available with Shea Glam or not, but in case you have it. Now this is the most obvious and also the closest launch release. So obviously a lot of people are comparing the Okavango palette from Nomad to this palette because this palette came out just before the Natasha Denona. I know a lot of people already have videos up comparing the two, but there are a lot of differences. I think I don't see as many like these shades necessarily in the Natasha Denona, and then these look even like a little bit more subdued, where hers are a little bit deeper and saturated and even more like orangey tone. So I definitely see why people are comparing. It has a similar vibe to it. I'm sure you could get similar looks, but definitely not a dupe. Not a dupe, but an alternative. All right, then we have Mountain Trail, and this is by Sydney Grace. So this is just a 9-pan, so you're gonna be missing shades in here, but I do think that you can get a similar look and vibe. I love this palette so much. I love these like rich mustardy tones in here. I love the green. I love the shimmers in here. This Escape is a beautiful green gold, which is pretty much one of my favorite shimmers to wear. So, and then I think you could get similar look here. Now this is a really close match to this one actually. This is the Nomad by Juvia's Place. So you do have warmer, let me just put them side by side. You do have a little bit warmer tone in here, just slightly, but like these are pretty similar palettes. But the formula in this one is excellent. I've always loved the looks that I have done. I'm always so intentional. I mean, look how I'm matchy match here. Like, yeah. That's on purpose, obviously. But I love this shade here. I think it's such a pretty like orangey brown, like a deep, like it's like the most mustardy, deep that you could get. And then you have this matte with like sparkles in here, this mustard yellow, and then this leans green. So yeah, I think this is a fun one. And then we have the Glam Light Dirty Martini. Now, this is definitely like cooler tone looking here, and it probably would throw you off just by looking at these two shades. But I think if you take away these, you can see some similarities. This is a heavy green palette, so you don't have some of those like orangier tones or those rich, deep neutrals that are in the Natasha Denona. But I still think you could get a few similar looks with this one. All right, next we have the LA Girl Hey Hey Vacay. I definitely think this has some similar vibes to it. You got the orange leaning tones in here, the browns, the greens. This is a really good palette. I love LA Girl. So I know, okay, some people have gotten this palette and I know that they've decluttered over time. I've seen people anyway do that, and I always wonder why. And I think it's just because it's not not that it's not exciting, but you know, people just like they like names, okay? And they want to feel fancy, and they want the name brand like the Natasha Denona or Pat McGrath, which I have those too. But you cannot discount like how good this quality is. Like these are the shimmers right here. They're very reflective, very metallic. The mattes build up really nicely. The mattes are a little bit, well, no, that one's really soft. I was gonna say they can be a bit drier in this palette, or these palettes, but there's an orange, there's a green. Honestly, this palette is really good with really, really similar vibes here. So it may be one of the closest out of all of them. All right, I shared this one already. Well, I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know if you're following Instagram or TikTok or what, but I did a TikTok where I showed this, and you may look at this and go, girl, that doesn't look anything like that palette. Okay, I get, like, take away this row here, this purple row, but right here, this is very like neutral leaning, and then here you have the green. So I think if you just imagine these two weren't here, you could definitely see some similarities here. And the look that I created, I did share it in my stories, and I know a few people thought it was going to be the Natasha Denona palette, and I'm like, no, it's ColourPop, it's a mood. And this is a really good palette. Yes, it's a mega palette, so it's bigger, but the quality in here is really, really nice. It really is. So even if you have a bigger palette that looks like, oh, there's a purple row or there's a red row, that's not in that palette, doesn't mean that there's still not pretty much all the shades in there. Next, we have the Colored Rain Queen Bee palette. This is one of my absolute favorite palettes from Colored Rain, if not my favorite. It is so good. Yes, it's only a 6-pan, so you're not gonna get all, you know, all the shades, but I'm more so just trying to show palettes that have similar vibes, you know, that you could get one or two looks similar out of it. So this like multi or duochrome in here is just, oh, I already had something on my finger, the orange, but it is so reflective and beautiful on the eye. It's gorgeous in the inner corner, gorgeous on the lid, but this is such a good palette, and maybe a stretch out of all of them as an alternative, but I kind of wanted an excuse just to show it. Next, we have the Emeralds palette by Profusion. The tin pans, if you followed me at all, or if, you know, sometimes people that I'm friends with that we chat on Instagram and in the DMs, like, know that I'm always talking up these tin pans. They are $5 and they are so, so good. Not all Profusion palettes are created equal. This quality is much better than those big palettes that they have. These tin palettes are so good. So you don't have like the browns as much in here, like the depth, but you do have lots of greens in here. And then like this gold is beautiful. It's more of like that rich, deep gold. And then like this green fern, you see, and then juniper. So yeah, like you could get maybe like 2 or 3, and you could use this rustic-y looking terracotta here too, and get a couple of similar looks. Then we have the Oma Beauty Freedom palette. Oma Beauty is so underrated, I think, as a brand, and their eyeshadows specifically. This palette is gorgeous. It is so, so pretty. It probably does not, pick up like I would love it to, but these shimmers in here are so shiny and metallic. Like they look like a brand new shiny penny, especially this shade right here. It kind of picks up differently in the camera. It is so beautiful. You have this king shade, gorgeous. And then you have all of these neutrals here. And so is it exact? No. Oh, this one has a gold green. Oh, you guys, so pretty. I'd actually be curious. I know a lot of people are saying that the Yucca palette is one of the best. So the formulas and the shimmers are amazing. So I've got high hopes. I haven't always been the most complimentary to Natasha Denona's formula, just because I have some other palettes with amazing formulas that I compare to. But I would be so curious to compare to these shimmers because they are just so shiny. I really need to use that palette again soon. That one is so good. Okay, 2 more palettes left. if I can get through this without breaking one. Okay, this is actually pretty similar. This is the Gemini palette from Melt Cosmetics. This is very, very, very similar in feel, tone. I mean, yes, you're missing a few things here, but if we're just talking, you know, like a palette that's got some like foresty, jungly greens, some murky greens, some, you know, neutrals, depth to light. I mean, this one is a fair comparison. Not a dupe, but a really fair comparison. This is an excellent, excellent palette. All right, the last one is one that I have to hide 2 shades because you're gonna be like, what? But this is the 12 Days of Lunar by Lunar Beauty. This was the holiday palette that came out that looks nothing, inside looks nothing like the outside. Looks like it would be like a icy blue, silvery, purple palette. And instead it looks like this. Okay, this would probably throw you off, this purple right here. So let's remove that. That's, I mean, you don't have all the shades of green. Of course, you're limited there. But if you're like, I just want one of those greens and like to make a look with, you know, some of the neutrals, and well, if you have this palette, you might be able to do that, you know? So I really love this palette. It just looks nothing like the outside. Cracks me up every time. It's identity crisis here. But that is it, you guys. Those are my 14 alternatives to the Yucca palette. I know I wrote down and I ended up buying it because, like I said, I'm weak, but originally I was like, I'm not gonna buy it, and I want to do this video and show people, like, if you're having FOMO, don't worry, look in your own collection, or maybe if you don't have the money and you have maybe like $20-$30 to spend, some of these are around that price point. And then I went and blew it and bought it myself. But it was still important for me to share it with you. So let me know if you have any of these palettes. Let me know if you did end up breaking down like I did and buying it, and just your thoughts in general about if you like these alternatives. And as always, have fun shopping. Budget shopping. Bye.